Well, hello, here we are back on the bag. So anyway, today I want to look at some of the punches that we haven't looked at, and I just wanted to mention first of all, I saw someone saying like that hunyuan involves up and down, so that you can hit someone up or you can drop your weight into a punch, and this is, well, I don't understand what they're saying as such, so what I'm going to do is just criticise that briefly and say that hunyuan obviously involves the way a configuration is formed in each one, that it uses far li, whichever kind of far li that it uses, there's forces going in all directions, but I don't for 1 second want to reduce it just to like this mechanical basic idea that, you know, I talked about someone had put a video up and they've got arrows pointing in different directions to show how the body works, and that completely eliminates from the picture the way that higher levels of muscular and bodily integration, it's not just about muscles by any means, the way it's also about bone alignment and screwing force, and the way that forces are used in the body to generate force, and the way that's controlled by intent as a whole system, and the complexities of different levels of relaxation and tension, so that you can have, like I talked about in standing, where you can have this feeling where you're radiating and it doesn't contradict any laws of physics or biology. You can trigger the movement to go forward and backwards. You can trigger the nerves and impulses at the same time. If you're not moving, it doesn't contradict any laws of physics whatsoever, or physiology. In fact, trigger the movement to feel you pushing forwards, pushing back, out, in, up, down, and the same with other parts of the body at the same time. The next stage of that, when you understand this as a process, is that actually even when you move, you can still be feeling like you're also pushing in all those directions as well. You just change the ratio so that it's dominant on pushing forwards, it's dominant on pushing backwards, but I'm still feeling like I'm pushing forwards even though I'm pushing backwards. It's just now I feel like I'm 60% pushing backwards and 40% pushing forwards, and at the end of the day that's just tension, isn't it? It's just, again, this word that we don't necessarily like, tension, muscle engagement in the body to create that feeling. Muscle engagement, it's a better word than tension because tension's so simplistic, but muscle engagement, nerve engagement, but also look at, like, if I do something like that, it's the alignment of the bones as well in the movement. It's the alignment of the body and the levels of relaxation and the ratios of tension that knit together the bones and the whole body into a total system. That's hunyuan taken on to the next stage, and I talked about how Wang Shengjai explains it like that, particularly like that. And so when we think about it like that, when we bring it up into a dynamic configuration, so even when we're just standing, that's a configuration, but when we change it into something like a punch, all those things are there, so we can't just reduce it to a silly diagram with arrows going in different directions. I mean, that just comes from, well, I don't need to say what it comes from, do I? But if I had to guess, I'd say it comes from people who just didn't get there. You know, they just didn't get there with the standing. They just didn't get it, even though it's not that hard. They just didn't get it in the end. But that being by the by, when we use this kind of movement, this whole body integrated movement, I talked about the idea that we can stack the postures in particular ways. So we think about, well, how do we stack a posture for a jab? You know, we can stack it like this, we can stack it like that. The specifics of how we form a configuration, and then how we skew the configuration one way or another. And all of these, like, there's subtle things that the intent does, particularly to make sure that the force goes to one particular point rather than another. So, you know, just leaning in this way, like this, to get the force to this point. But also I talked about that very often the intent will also try and maximize power, so it will lean across like that. You see all the time in Yiquan, it will lean to create more space. And you see different versions of it. I saw like a hands Yiquan version, which was much more like moving like this, side to side. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing, for example, as when Yao Cheng Rong does a hook like that, you know, leaning to the side to create more space and add more power into the posture. That's skewing the posture. So hunyuan isn't that. So there's a separation, and we need to understand that separation. Once we've got the feeling that whole body's knitted together, and like oppositional force. Well, this is going back and this is going forward. It couldn't be any clearer, really. And everything's pushing in different directions. That physiological feeling of radiating. When we do it like this in stillness, I talked about it's completely balanced from this posture. And then if we just skew it one way or the other, or stack a configuration and skew that configuration, then we change the ratio and balance of forces to hit at a certain point. So when we throw a punch, what are the rules that then determine, or how do we conceptually frame what we're doing so that we can understand it ourselves and teach it to other people? That the framework that we're working with to understand how we redistribute the elements of hunyuan li to throw a punch, all the things we were talking about in the last Bagwork video, when we redistribute them, how do we understand that? And what are the fundamental rules that we base that redistribution around? What they are is close, so the hips coming closer together like that, close, open like that, so the whole body opening, the hips going apart like that, down, and you can see straight away that combines, of course, in with, it doesn't have to, but it's combining with close there, but also down, that way is combining with open this way, so they do combine. Up, so open, close, up, down. These aren't individual elements of hunyuan li. The idea of hunyuan li isn't that you've got 6 possible directions you can hit in. That's ridiculous. There's an infinite number of directions you can hit in micro directions. Just like there's an infinite number of compass points, but we just use basic, from which we extrapolate the infinity of the rest. Up, down, open, close are not broken off from hunyuan li. They're the way that we form a configuration. Do we jab like this, or do we jab like this? Do we use open? Do we use close? And why do we do that? And some of those things are quite contradictory. Then it comes into, well, which way do we skew or stack a posture? Do we use open, close, or up and down? Every one of them uses hunyuan li. So it's not like if you hit someone's arms up that you're just using up. You're still using hunyuan li, and you can still choose which way you're gonna. It can be hard to see. Like if I do that, that's actually closed because my leg's coming in like that. Stack it like that, but I can stack it like that. See the hips go further. I can stack it like that instead. That's actually open. And I can also skew the posture in different ways. So I can skew the posture to the side like that. And depending on what I want to do will determine which way that I'm going to do that, for example. So if I want to move someone that way, like that, I'm going to use close. Let's say I'm engaging someone's guard and I want to hit their guard and move them. I use close to skew it that way. And if I want to hit them that way, I use open. So one way my legs come in that way, I'm overemphasizing it, and the other way they open that way. So close, open like that. All that is about is getting the force to the point and maximising the efficiency of the system and the way it put it that way or that way. If I try and do it that way, I can do it. So like I've always said, like there can be multiple different ways of doing it. They're all perfectly within the Yiquan paradigm. It's just that usually one way is more powerful than the other, and one way particularly of stacking the configuration might be more in alignment with the average thing that we think might happen in a fight. So it's like, do I throw a punch like that? Or do I throw a punch like that? How do I make the scientific determination which one should it be? Nothing within the paradigm itself tells you which one is right. That's all about, we've got to make decisions about that. It's a separate thing from the way that we're learning to stack and skew and configure postures. So let's say I want to go this way and up. So I've got to stack the posture in a different way again, but I'm still using hunyuan li in exactly the same way, but I'm pushing my hips forward. I'm pushing my hips forward so that I can go up like that. Let's say I want to go down, so I've got to, so now I'm using like just a little double shuffle forward like that. It's a kind of routine we've not looked at yet. Like that. You can hear it set off the back foot pretty clearly then. So they're all different, open, close, up, down, it's all the same posture. But depending on which way I want to do it, it all changes round. It's open, close, up, down, skewed, whichever way, and then whichever way I choose to skew it, whichever direction I choose to go, whichever principle I choose to use, open, close, up or down, depending on where the target is. My intent's got to make all that calculation and knit it all together. So the overall key point is wherever I use up or down, it uses hunyuan li. You don't just extract one of those. It doesn't mean something as basic as you can move this way and that way and that way and that way. And you can go like that, you can go like that, and you choose. No, it doesn't mean that at all. Whichever way you move, you're using hunyuan li. Open, close, up and down are not the same thing as the 6 directions in hunyuan li. They're not the same things. Open, close, up and down are the 4 ways that we use to stack or skew a posture. Stack being the way that we form the posture, and skew being basically, let's just call it the lean or the angle that we put on the way the posture is configured. So I hope that makes sense as we now move into looking at some of the things that are based around open, close, and up and down. So we did start to look at this. All these postures, we'll get through more today because you pretty much know what you need to do, and I just need to demonstrate them a little bit. All of them are really intense on particularly these 3 knuckles, so you've got to be careful. I'm going to begin with, let's assume that we know our distance, and I understand this is very close range. I started out by saying that it's very close range at first. Later on, we'll start adding in how to use not enough room here really, how to use a step to bring distance and how to hit from longer distance and stuff like that. But for now, for our starting idea, we're going to hit up this way. And what's key with these up postures, and you've probably seen it yourself if you've looked at Yiquan videos, is for this kind of uppercut, particularly in Yao's Yiquan. This kind of uppercut, like the body coming back more like that. And you can feel it when you get on a bag and you hit up, that actually this really does help lift the bag right up like that. But what that is up. So up like. So I'll do a few, just like we talked about in the other videos, nice and light, just to get the feeling, because the way the posture is, the way the configuration is stacked is different for each posture, so it just gives your body different amounts of feedback. So and again we're on this like about 35 degrees angle hitting into the back, not round the side, you know. If you're round the side and you want to hit him with this like flat fist like that, generally speaking, if you bare knuckle, you want to get round and hit like, rather than try to get in. You can get round, and it's one of the things where, like if you try and do like, let's say a straight hook like that, and you try and get round to the side like that, I said before, you hit in with the gloves, and I was just experimenting with this on the bag the other day. Yeah, I nearly broke my finger. So you just, because if I'm going to do that, I always do flat like that. I always change like that to hit flat like that. I'll never come in like that for obvious reasons. I'll only come in if I'm going to do a clothesline, something like that. I'll hit in this way. But with this chopping up hook, it's a little bit different. Because you can get these 3 knuckles in, so you can get the thumb right out of the way, like that, the thumb's right out of the way. So you can actually, let's say I'm going to take the risk and lean, I'm going to skew it right over and do this way. I can get a chopping up hook, flat up like that, but if I turn it around that way, it becomes much more problematic. If I want to do that to the side, I'm just hitting in with those knuckles there, like that. So I'd have to change it up a little bit like, and come round, and I'd have to get the energy going round more like that. Otherwise, I'm hitting in kind of forwards like that, and it pushes the wrist forward like that, and we don't want that. So to start with, we just think about this 35-degree angle, and we just practice nice and light. And exactly the same for the this, like that. I know it's nearly tea time, but it's not quite tea time. Go on, you go that way. Go on. Yeah, the one I did, you can go back and just have a look. Should have said it then, but the dog came over. The one I did just before the dog came over, I just stacked it slightly wrong, and I just lost like my balance. I just felt the whole root go because my foot was just offline. And if the foot's offline, then the whole posture becomes offline like that. You can still twist in, but you're going to go that way, and you lose that solidity that you get from a solid root. So just be aware. Those are all like everyone does it wrong, you know. And those times when you do it wrong are actually the times that explain the principle more than anything else. The times when you do it wrong, it's like, oh god, you don't even notice that it's right when it's right half the time. It's when you do it wrong, it's like, oh god, I lost all the solidity in the posture then. So it's like, right, okay, that's how that works. Go on. So let's bring it up a little bit. Oh no, let's do and pull back and use the bounce off the bag like that. The somatic timing of the like that, and just bounces it back like that. And then I'll do them sharper in a bit because I'll combine them. We can change for there. And for this down, like we come up first and then drop down, so we're maximising our ability to use down. So lift up with the root, and then drop the like that. And it's quite interesting how often you see this practiced like that. You very rarely need to go that far with this. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a really bad habit to do that like that. What's the point when we do it? It's probably the most we're going to go in is about there into the chest. Why would you want to go any lower than the chest? Hit over into the chest, anywhere between face and chest. Backhand I'm doing that, obviously. Hit and stop. Like that. And now hit and pull back. Like that. Same for uppercuts, but uppercuts are the most dangerous to do, and they're the most taxing on the knuckles, because you really feel those knuckles twisting in a way that it just maximises the pain that you receive back into the knuckle posture. And it's also really easy to injure yourself. So I mean, I'm not recommending it, I'm just demonstrating. Starting off light. And what we're going to do is we're not going to drop, as I talked about in the initial video. And you can see what we're doing here. We're taking the same things and then just doing them again at different levels. So we did them on the air, now we're doing them on a bag. Eventually you do them on a pad, then you do them in drills with a partner, then you bring them up into sparring drills, and you bring it into sparring. Bob's your uncle. It's as simple as that. Continually elevating the basics, overlapping it. So we're not going to drop. We talked about sometimes you want to do that. You want to drop, you want to get between someone's hands or under someone's hands. But for our basic posture, we use this like this, and just hit in this way like this. Get into the bag, make a little indent in the bag, and just push in and hit. Do it nice and light first. You see the use of up, hit and stop. You can get closer for this. I mean, uppercuts can be any range really that you can hit with. Old school, 1893, best of 73 rounds. You can hit like that, or you can be really close range and get in with a little dink like that. Do it the other way. So twist, and that's, you can see the danger with the wrist and what the wrist is doing. This is why you've got to build it up step by step, like nice and light. So you can get in there. Obviously, the harder you hit, the more you can get an indent into the bag, and then when you twist, that indent is still there, and you can get purchase on the bag and lift it. When you're just hitting it light like this, you don't get that. And I'll do backhand, but I'll do it a little bit sharper, and I'll do it with the pull back. So you see it come straight back, boom. Doesn't go back like that. It's just a simple straight pull back. So do it this one. No, that won't be very visible, will it? Wow, look at the use of up in the posture. So all of those use some form of hunyuan li to create it's all being done very light, but they all use open, close, up and down. Well, no they don't. These just use up and down, but our other punches use open, close, up and down. So we can think about all our basic ways of doing this. Now I suppose I can go through them like we've done. So we've done nice and light, and what we want like for this overhand, just as it hits in, just so touch of, you just drop the back root like that, just sink down like that, just drop the. And I've talked before about this, like using gravity, or Wang Shangjai calls the power of the Earth's core or something like that, which is called gravity. One. So just, I suppose it's easier if I do it this way, isn't it? Let's just use down like that. We still use screwing force with the other arm, like that, and timing the drop. So here's the lock point, and I'm doing a little set, like my heel is coming up, and if I really emphasise it, my also, yeah, my heel comes up and then sets back down with the drop. So it's like it's a different kind of routine that we haven't looked at before, and it's got the really fancy name of a heel drop route. So it's just simply drop, but you can hardly see it. Like if I do, and if I do it faster, like it's just like a very fast, like it puts the weight on the front of the foot and then just drops the heel back. It's just everything to just maximise the ability, but it's too much to come all the way up and then down. It'd be too slow. So just all these little things, like they all just add like 1%, 2%. Squeaky. Well, squeaker's gonna squeak. It's like the internet, isn't it? Squeakers are gonna squeak. Only not as lovely an ace as my dog. Just adding little bits of power in, and they all just add up together, and they don't just add power on their own. They integrate into a system which creates more integration of the power, say the power structure, but the power structure of the body, the configuration of the body. So it just lifts up and then just drops into the like that. And just dropping down like that. And then what do we do next? We sharpen it up. It's a bit of an unusual posture because we want to drop, and we use this that we haven't really looked at before as such, but I've mentioned it there. The shift into the side farley like that, and you'll see, for example, Yao Cheng Rong does like a hook like that, just shifts the weight over to the side like that. So it very much uses that like that. That's all about adding power to the posture, obviously. Like so, people who talk about things like, "What a power just comes from your intent," like how, like like magic, like electricity or something like that. No, the intent knits the body together to generate power in the right way. So you've got to get this, because it's using this kind of twisting fairly, but it's also using a drop over at the side. You see it just like this foot, it's setting on this foot like that. I'm going to do it a little bit. Well, what I want to do is like do it from the kind of hunyuan standing. It's useful if there's some kind of ambient noise that just really disrupts your zen. So it's like being at a nightclub or something. This is better than some of the tunes that I've heard recently, I have to say. So from our standing, and it's a little bit harder because we've got to go. We're not just going to go like straight out like with a stick the spike out like with a hook or something like that. Not that we should quite be doing it like that, we should be phased, but it's harder because we've got to come up and then down from the posture. So it's more of an ask for our skill level. If you like now, you can start switching between lead hand, backhand, backhand. And that's part of the pedagogy as well, because at first when you're just practicing for the first time, you just focus on one, give your intent that information. And it's too much to do one, two, because they're two different postures, so it's not good pedagogy. But as you get better at this stage, we should be able to do one, then do the other. We're learning faster. Same thing for our chopping up. And I always do that. It can be good to just stand for longer periods. I mean, 2-3 minutes, and then just intermittently go. Do standing in front of your punch bag. Do it like that. Just be careful. If you catch more of the front of this fist for this, well, I just cut it a little bit too much across like that. That just almost hurt my thumb. So you've got to be really careful, get it on that angle. If you get it too far over like that, hit it with the front, then it hits and it's not in alignment with your wrist, so that actually hurts more than the Yiquan twisting, which is quite interesting. So getting it aligned with your thing like that. Now uppercuts we looked at. So things to think about with uppercuts is taking out the drop. We train that separately, like the dropping in like that. We train that separately for our basic fundamental each one. We want this twist, like I said. So and this is getting like it gets, as I said in the uppercut video, the first one, it gets the movement, it takes some of this movement and puts it here instead, but it doesn't get this is actually harder to get in. If it's a clean target, if the chin is just there and nothing's guarding it, then you can get through, but if it's guarded up, this is a bigger movement, it's smeared across a bigger space, so it's harder to get in, but practice it like this to start with. And you can practice, this is as far as you want to go bare knuckle, I have to say, because it puts a lot of strain on particularly the uppercuts, put a lot of strain on those knuckles. You don't want to go any harder than that. If you're going to start hitting the bag harder, then you've got to get some bag gloves on. would be my suggestion at first, and then do some training bare knuckle, and then do the harder stuff with gloves on, and then just build up your resilience. I've said before, I saw a guy hitting a bag bare knuckle full contact, and I thought, yeah, well, you won't be doing that for long, you know, thinking that I know everything. And 25 minutes later, he was still banging the bag really, really hard bare knuckle. So it's like, right. Then I realised, like, yeah, well, clearly you can do that. You know, you can develop that, but carefully. What revolutionised Wang Xiangjai's level was when he got boxing gloves. He already had a boxing punch bag, but someone gave him some Western boxing gloves. All of a sudden, he could start hitting it full contact, and it just totally changed his level for exactly the reason that I've talked about before. That once you start hitting it full contact, it totally solidifies your configuration. It reveals all, particularly if you're a really careful learner like Wang Xiaojia, who's really analysing everything. It really teaches your body how to move well. So what I'm saying is, don't just think like, oh, I'm going to build up to that over 10 years. No, that's not the way to do it. As soon as you start hitting it harder than this, get some gloves on it, and then integrate some bare knuckle training with some bagwork training, because that will improve your overall level higher. You can be improving your knuckle strength while you're improving your overall level, but if you try and do it like, I'm just going to build my knuckle strength step by step, that's going to take far longer, and you're going to miss loads and loads of training that trains the rest of your body through hitting the bag really, really hard. So take my advice, because you can practice all those things yourself, and you can, well, there's not even any variations. You can just practice the different ways that we've done it. So hitting up, hitting down, and uppercuts, you can practice those yourself. I suppose we could just add in, seeing as how we're here, we could just start adding in the shovel hook this way, which just is exactly on that 35-degree angle off as well. It's not the same as hitting in the side like that. That's different. The way that we're doing it, we're going straight in on an angle. Just hitting on an angle like that, and we're still hitting with those three knuckles there like that. And it's just thinking about, you know, roughly your own midsection. So we do exactly the same process again. This is one where you've got to be really careful. Don't go past that angle, because you can just buckle your wrist over like that. So we're starting exactly the same way, nice and relaxed. Hit and stop. And change. Hit and stop like that. And then what do we do next? Same level, but hit and pull back. So same power level, and then just hit. As the foot resets, hand comes back up, quite relaxed. We're doing hit and pull back. And see the posture. Same the other way. Hit and pull back. And it's the same thing, we just built a power level step by step. Do a little bit more on these, because you just want to get it exactly right. Building the power up is dangerous for this, so get the solidity of the arc of the body just right. Like that. When you get this feeling right, this is when we're saying standing a feeling like an ingot. That's like the whole body knits together. Doesn't mean robotic like. You get a feeling like an ingot, and then you've got to see some people moving like this. Now at the hip point, everything's totally solid into the hip. And then the same thing, sharper, but you've got to be much more careful with this. It's a real buckle risk. Oh, we haven't done the back, have we? So, same thing for the back. Then we just bring it up sharper anyway, so but still nowhere near full power. Just sharper, just being careful with it. Do front hand first, being careful with the posture. And backhand. And then just hit and pull back just the same. Like that. And all those exercises that we've done, and that's, you can mostly work out for yourself what you need to do for all of those. Don't need to demonstrate them all, I don't think. Self-directed learning. So that's our upgrade for, well, it's not even upgrades, it's just moving on to these 1, 2 and uppercuts. The most important thing, you could work out all of that yourself. The most important thing is to start thinking about open, close, up and down, not as things that you choose out of hunyuan li, but things that contextualise and it's how hunyuan li is skewed. So hunyuan li is the whole movement of the body, and then thinking about, well, how do I, as a dynamic configuration, what's this? It's closed. What's this? It's open. But they both use hunyuan li. It's not one is, it's not you choose, it's not a choice. Hunyuan li, like, it's not giving you a choice between which direction. Everything's got to be hunyuan li. But they're all skewed in different ways and stacked in different ways, using for all these postures, doesn't matter how we do them, they're all just open, close, up and down, open, close, up and down, not even forwards and backwards, not even left and right. Once you get your head around that, they're not forwards and backwards, they're not left and right, because they're not elements of hunyuan li. They're the way the body itself, like the easiest way to think is the way the hips and the chest move. Do they close? Do they open? How do they work like that? Do we rise up? Do we sink down? And that integrates with our postures, and then the way that we skew. And why we're doing it, is it to get more power, is it to avoid whatever? So understanding that, and I always say, like in my academic classes, like some ideas are like, you've got to sit with them, you've got to think about them, and then you've got to experience them experientially and practice. And then what really helps as well is trying to explain it to someone else, saying like, oh, I'm trying to work on this concept, try to understand this concept. Then explaining it to someone else very often just like makes you see it in a totally different, enlightened way. You say, right, I get it now that I've explained it to someone else. So let's assume now that is going to make sense. So it links in. Got plenty of stuff to talk about that more. So let's leave that there for now. So as ever, one love, and nourish everyone's development. Don't be in pointless competition with others. So it's me telling you what to do. It's a better way to live. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. What? You've been forgotten. Go.